Hey everybody, so a lot of the videos I've been doing lately have been about diesel locomotives, and that's simply because a lot of the new arrivals at the train store have been diesels, and so because of that I haven't really done a video on a steam locomotive in a couple months. Well, that's going to change today. I'm going to show you a steam locomotive that is so big I can't even pick it up to show you. It's still on the track. We're going to be checking out Lionel's latest 210-4 steam locomotive, and this one is in a really cool Santa Fe black bonnet paint scheme, and it's coming up right now on Eric's Trains. All right, so we'll start off with a little bit of history on the prototype. As I said, this is a 210-4 type locomotive. That means you've got 2 wheels up front, 10 drive wheels, and 4 wheels on the trailing truck. The 210-4 is derived from 2 different classes of steam locomotive, the Santa Fe 210-2 and the 284 Berkshire. So basically, if a 210-2 and a 284 had a baby, it would be a 210-4. Now, although the first 210-4s were built in 1919 as experimental units for the Santa Fe, the first American railroad to really put them to use was the Texas and Pacific, and so thereafter, here in the States at least, the 210-4 became known as the Texas type locomotive, in keeping with the tradition of naming a locomotive class after the first railroad to use it. However, up in Canada, these were typically known as Selkirk type locomotives. Although the Texas and Pacific rostered a fairly large number of them, the Pennsy would become the largest user of the 210-4 type with more than 100 units in service. Today, there are no known operating 210-4s either in the US or Canada, although there are a handful of them that have been preserved, with the most noteworthy likely being Texas and Pacific number 610, which operated in excursion service in the 70s and 80s and also participated in the American Freedom Train to celebrate the country's bicentennial in 1976. Right now, however, TNP number 610 is not in operating condition. It's on static display at the Texas State Railroad's Hall of Giants in Palestine, Texas. And as far as I know, there are currently no plans to return it to operating condition. But who knows what the future holds. And as I said, there are other 210-4s on display at various museums throughout the country. And now let's talk about Lionel's rendition of the 210-4. This one was offered in Lionel's 2022 Volume 1 catalog, and it was delivered in late November of 2022. Now, this was not the first time Lionel had ever done the 210-4. They've done them many times in the past. In fact, I've got 2 of them in my collection. I'll talk about those in just a minute. This time around, however, Lionel did 6 versions of the 210-4 spanning 3 different road names. They did 3 Santa Fe road names, 2 of them prototypical black, numbers 5011 and 5022, and then they did 5001 here in a fantasy black bonnet paint scheme. They also did 2 Kansas City Southerns, number 902 and number 905. Now, they actually did KCS 905 back in 2019, just 3 years before. I've actually got that one in my collection. There it is, and I even did a review on it. So it's kind of interesting that they did the same road number just 3 years later, but that's kind of cool. And lastly, they did Pennsy number 6510. So 6 in all, 3 different road names. Now, I mentioned that I've already got a couple Lionel 210-4s in my collection. I mentioned KCS number 905. And I've also got Pennsy number 6479, which I got in 2013. I love that locomotive. Stats-wise, the combined length of the locomotive and the tender is right at 30.5 inches. The combined weight is 13 pounds, 13 ounces. So yeah, this thing is heavy. When tested, this locomotive produced 3 pounds, 11 ounces of pulling power, which is pretty darn good, and the minimum required curve needed to operate this locomotive is 0.72. On the inside, this locomotive is driven by 1 large flywheel motor, and then you've got legacy command and legacy rail sounds, and you've also got Bluetooth on board. So when it comes time to operate this locomotive, there are 5 different methods. Yeah, we're pretty spoiled these days. If you want to go old school, you could operate it conventionally with nothing more than a transformer and some track. The recommended way to run this locomotive would be to use Lionel's legacy command system, as that will give you access to all of this model's advanced features and functions. You can also run it with Lionel's classic TMCC command system. You can run it with the separately sold Lion Chief Universal Remote, and you can also run it with your smartphone thanks to that Bluetooth connectivity using the Lionel Lion Chief app. Going in for a few close-up shots on this model, you can see the pilot looks amazing. You've got a coupler cut bar, There's a dummy O-scale coupler, which can be swapped out for a dummy O-gauge coupler if you want to double head the locomotive. And then you've got that nice little cow catcher there and details above that. And then the front of the smoke box just looks amazing. All sorts of detail. You've got rivet detail, grab irons, classification lights, a nice brass swinging bell, a number board below the operating headlight, and the front swings open like that, which is always a nice touch. Around the corner, the drive wheels, all 10 of them, and all that drive gear look absolutely fantastic. That yellow stripe going down the side makes the whole thing pop. We've got a legible builder's plate up front, and then we've got all sorts of add-on detailing both on the underside with pipes and cylinders and so forth, and going down the boiler with the handrails and the throttle assembly. But undoubtedly, one of the coolest areas on this locomotive is the smokestack area, because we've got these really cool lighted number boards on either side. We've got the little brass whistle with a hole behind it for the whistle steam smoke effect. And then we've got the smokestack, and this thing actually has 3 interchangeable smokestacks. That's right. So right now I'm using this one. I like it because it kind of has a steampunk vibe to it. But if we want to swap it out, we can pull it up like that and replace it with a standard smokestack. There we go. It's that easy. And then if we want to put another one on, we can pull it up. And by the way, all 3 of these smokestacks, they have a rubber O-ring to give it a nice tight seal so that you don't get any smoke leaking out the sides. And then here is that 3rd smokestack. That one's pretty cool too. And then when it comes time to put smoke fluid into the smoke unit, you simply pour the smoke fluid directly down the stack. And when you do that, you'll be supplying smoke fluid not only for the smokestack, but for the whistle steam smoke effect as well. And then behind that whole smokestack area, we've got this sand dome, and the top of that can be removed, like so, to reveal the master control switches for the locomotive. So we've got the run program switch that you use to program the locomotive into your TMCC or legacy system, or base 3 in the future. Then we've got the Bluetooth on-off switch, the main smoke on-off switch, and the whistle steam smoke on-off switch. And the lid on this sand dome is held down with magnets to keep it in place. Behind that is another one of my favorite areas on this model with these really cool steam pipes going across the top. And then above the cab, we've got these vents that you can open up like that. The cab area looks great. There are 2 hand-painted crew figures inside the cab. The gap between the locomotive and the tender looks pretty good. There is no drop plate, but the distance is pretty good. And then if we look around, you can see the interior of the cab a little bit. They've got those nice curtains on either side, and then some nice details on the back head, valves and gauges and so forth. And of course, the interior of the cab is lighted. The tender for the 210-4 is huge. It's about 13.5 inches long. And just for comparison, here's the tender for the big boy, and it comes up short. It's about 2 or 3 inches shorter than the tender for the 210-4. So yeah, this thing is absolutely massive. The entire tender with that black bonnet paint scheme looks incredible, and that Super Chief logo there in the middle is absolutely amazing. The front of the tender, not too much detail going on, but that's okay. It's right up next to the locomotive. You do have some nice step detail on all 4 corners. On the back, you've got an add-on ladder and a backup light. And then up on top, you've got opening hatches both for the water and the fuel. On the underside of the locomotive, there are 2 traction tires on the last set of drivers, and we've got 3 pickup rollers for center rail power. And on the underside of the tender, there are 2 more pickup rollers. There's the sensor for the Lionel LCS sensor track, if you choose to use one. And then under this back truck, we've got the 2 speakers for the sound system. All right, the last thing we're going to do before we start this thing up is BFIMO. So this time for BFIMO, it's actually a tie. On the one hand, I love the 3 interchangeable smokestacks. I've got those on a couple other Lionel locomotives, I think a 484 and a 210-4, and it's just such a cool feature. I love that Lionel does that. It allows you to add some extra character to your 210-4. And then secondly, I absolutely love the black bonnet paint scheme. It is so cool. So yeah, between the smokestacks and the paint scheme, this is just one badass model. Okay, and now comes the fun part. Let's go ahead and fire this thing up.
This is the block operator. Clear to move east on 1 runner when ready. Over. Yes, sir. We'll fire her up. Out.
All right, so Lionel did give us a choice of 5 whistles and 5 bells, so let's check those out. Here are the whistles. And here are the 5 bells. Here's the cylinder steam sound. And the sound of water being added to the tender.
My water's full. Out.
And of course, the sound of oil being added to the tender.
My oil's full. Out.
This model has the bicolor classification light feature found on most Lionel high-end steam locomotives these days. And so you can change the color of the classification lights. So you can have them as green, white, or off. And then here's a small sampling of some of the crew talk sounds.
Howard, station work complete and ready to head east. Can I pull? Over. Things are taking a little longer than usual. Sit tight until I can get the line cleared. Out. These long waits are brutal. At least the back hit keeps the coffee hot. How does the fire look? Burning even. It's gonna be running on long if we don't move on soon. Got a lot of tonnage today. Better punch in some slack before we start out. Dispatcher, ready to roll. Can I pull? Over. You are clear to depart on signal indication. Out.
right, so there you have it, Lionel's latest 210-4 steam locomotive. This thing is totally badass. I'm really glad I picked up another one of these. I love the 210-4. I can't get enough of them in my collection, enough said. Now, if you want to get one of these things for yourself, the retail price, no matter which road name you get, is right at $1,750. Now that is the retail price. If you go through a good Lionel dealer, you should be able to get a bit of a discount off that retail price. And as always, if you're looking for a good Lionel dealer, try my favorite train store, which is Legacy Station. You can find them on the web at legacystation.com or give them a call at 770-339-7780. If you'd like to support this channel, I would greatly appreciate it. That can be done through Patreon at patreon.com/ericstrains. Patreon supporters get access to all sorts of perks and benefits, and you can read about those benefits on my Patreon page. I'd like to put a big thank you out there to all of my current Patreon supporters. Your support means the world, not only to me, but to the future of this channel. And a super extra big thank you goes out to my premium tier Patreon supporters. You'll see their names listed at the end of this video. And lastly, if you'd like to buy some Eric's Trains merchandise, you know, t-shirts, cups, cell phone cases, all that kind of stuff, if you look underneath this video, you'll see a listing of some of the items for sale. If you click on those, it'll take you to my online store, and you can purchase whatever you want. Anyway, let me know what you think in the comments below. I'd love to hear what you have to say. That's going to do it for now. I'm Eric Siegel. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you next time.